Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree to sharpen nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to go my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
That's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It's a science place. It's a scientific fact. We're all up in your face this time. Once again, for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. And additionally, welcome to it. Tonight's special episode. Mountain guest. A guy I know from Chicago, but is in the Mountain West now. So I feel very validated by always giving the live times that include Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific whenever I have someone from Mountain Time. And as opposed to people on the East Coast who literally just don't acknowledge any of their time zone exists. And he's an exciting one. This is a great fella. I originally know him from the band Bear Claw, very long running, awesome band Bear Claw, who are awesome. Two basses, very melodic, but heavy stuff. And there's a incredible band called Rented Rooms where he actually doesn't play drums, but they should just call that band drummer because everyone in that band is a good drummer. And of course, the mighty Almanac Man. The brand new-ish, it's pretty new to me, band who is doubly fantastic, operating out of Denver, Colorado, and gonna talk about all that with, of course, Mr. Scott Picco. But first, before we do literally any of the things that I just said right there, we are going to do this. Welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I am your host, Conan Neutron. I am a rock and roll lifer who has toured and recorded for over 22 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect. Folks that may or may not be household names, but do something very special. This is episode 304. And if this is your first time listening to the show, all the archives are at protonicreversal.com and are always free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. And if you like to support the show and get episodes sooner, you can give $1 a month to patreon.com/protonicreversal. And if you like the show, or even just a single episode, please feel free to share it along, like, subscribe, or post a review. All of that helps people find the show. Just a darn nice thing to do. Okay, cool. So now I call that the taking out the trash part of the show, and I never used to do it, but I feel pretty good about it. I feel like it's sounding less stilted and unnatural, but let me know how you feel. So without further ado, maybe a little bit of ado. No. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him on. Mr. Scott Picco.
Hey, welcome. How's it going, Conan?
How you doing, man? Here, I'll do this.
Good. Real good.
Thanks
for having me. Thanks
so much for coming on. I appreciate you wore your finest Shiner shirt for that. It's awesome. Let's start off with the most recent, and I want to kind of go through a little later song by song. Almanac Man's an interesting confluence of folks because I know Brian from other circles. And how did Almanac Man come to pass? Like, how did this band form?
Yeah. So I'd say so when I moved out here, it was like April 2019. I had to get situated, and I had met Brian on a cursory level through the PRF Barbecue Chicago back in, I think it was 2016. But we didn't talk too much, just a little bit. I knew who he was. He knew who I was. So when I moved out here, once I got settled, I wanted to try to get in some kind of a musical project. I've been musical project since I was 20, basically, without interruption. So after we got settled, I went and met him actually at the he kind of organized the PRF Denver barbecue, And when I saw him there, we kind of talked a little bit, and I mentioned that I was looking to start something up, and he said, well, he had Larium going at the time, and he'd let me know maybe we could jam or whatever. And then a month or two went by, and coincidentally, Larium broke up. The drummer left the band, and so we started playing, and that just kind of dovetailed into Almanac Man. Once we had a couple songs put together, guitar, drums, he brought in Nick Holtz, who's the bass player from Larium as well, and that's kind of the way it came about. Yeah.
Did you guys land on the name fairly early on, or was there a challenge to get there?
No, that's a good question. It always seems to be, especially nowadays, trying to find something.
Especially, yeah.
But I would say that one actually came together pretty organically. I would say it wasn't very early on, but we kind of had a unique start. I'm sure it's not a unique story given the time frame that we formed 2019, but we just got to the point where we were going to be able to play a show. We were starting to talk about a band name, and then COVID hit. And then about 2.5 years later, I think we played our first show, something along the lines of that. So we did have the name right before COVID hit, maybe 4 or 5 months into the band, but didn't really use it or anything until we started releasing and playing out and things like that. So
I find that interesting too, because bands that have started up recently that did start up during the pandemic, or we're about to start playing live or whatever, it's a crazy time to have a new endeavor kind of be brought into the world, right? Because I think it helps when everyone in the band it seems like has been in bands before, like it's not their first time around the block, right? And I think that helps a lot, but it's still a crazy time to we don't even necessarily quite know what this is yet, because we've only just started doing this, but you basically have to put it on with carbonite, in the Han Solo carbonite, until we figure out what's happening with the world. And that's what was that did it kind of feel just strong enough from the get-go that you're like, no, I want to see this through, this is cool, I dig this?
Yeah, I would say that was, we felt good about where it was going. And I mean, obviously there were negatives with having to wait to play out and really get things going. But in a way, it kind of gave us a chance to really hone the songs, and really, we had plenty of time. So we just kept working on different arrangements, coming up with what we felt like was the best arrangement. We took, well, at least for me personally, I took way more time writing vocals than I have in any other band. Did a lot of demoing with different ideas with demos that we would record when we were playing in the basement here, and that was one of the positive aspects of it. But yeah, it was going on 2.5 years, and Brian and I and Nick at the time were all like, are we ever going to play a show? And then the interesting thing was about 3 months or 2 months or so before we played our first show, Nick said, hey, I'm moving back to the East Coast. So Brian and I were like, we're finally ready to play a show. Now the bass player is going back to the East Coast. But luckily, we found a great person to step in. Sean joined the band, was about a year or so now ago, and he stepped in and picked it right up. So that definitely went as good as it possibly could. But yeah, it was a strange endeavor up until then, for sure. Yeah. Well,
yeah, the only reason I bring it up is because I feel like there's a certain amount of energy you have to put into something new that you don't have the inertia to rest on when it's already kind of a known commodity, and you have stakes in it, in the fact that there's records out. It's a thing that tours, like whatever. It seems as if Bear Claw, for instance, has you can kind of operate Bear Claw on low power for extended lengths of time, and I know you guys have done that, and it works out fine. But you just don't necessarily new. It's a delicate time when you're getting something new together. But I think it's a cracking band. I think it's really great, and it was a pleasant surprise. Actually, so this speaks to the credit of the band. I heard about it, and heard about it being something I should check out before I knew who was involved with it.
Oh, that's good to hear.
So
I did not know that.
No. I figured I'd save that for when I have you on. Butter you up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
It's awesome. It's awesome. It's It's really cool. Did you? I actually don't know the answer to this question, but did you start singing or did you start playing drums first?
In Almanac Man?
In general.
Or general.
Yeah.
I actually started a million years ago playing guitar and singing.
Right.
This is back late 90s. But so I would say I started playing drums first, and then I kind of worked in some very minor vocal stuff in the early Bear Claw records, and the band even predated that called Hello Operator that was around for about a year. But it was really, really sparse. And then it just kind of, I drew on the singing while playing guitar background and just kind of worked it in with drumming more. But it was a little bit of a steep learning curve at first. So eventually I was able to work it in more and more.
Yeah. And it's something where I think that there's always, well, first of all, there's the stigma of the singing drummer. I guess we can just start with that, which is earned or not is definitely exists. And then there's also the mechanics of, if you're tippy tapping away or doing some Ramon stuff, okay, that's fine. But if you're really throwing yourself into it, that's a lot of limb independence, first of all, because you have to worry about a microphone, unless you're a headset mic kind of guy. And then it's a lot more to concentrate on. Like there's just not tons of examples of folks that have done it well. And it's always interesting visually too, to have like, you've got this triangle or trapezoidal, sure, formation, and then you have the singer being like the one on the drums, but then also you've got the cool vistas that have like the underlighting, so it's like a bit of a show anyway, so it comes up rather unorthodox. But did you find that to be logistically difficult to try to pull off at first? Did you have any tips or tricks you could share?
Well, yeah, I can tell you the way I kind of I feel like I got better at it over time. But yeah, it was a big steep curve at first, and I've always done it where I write the drum part totally independent of the singing before I even think about the lyrics. And then I would try to do a mix of trying to figure out where I could sing and not sing and where it would make sense, and kind of work that out. And then once I got that kind of roughed in and I was starting to get more comfortable with it, the drumming part always kind of had to almost be on autopilot by the time I added the vocals. So there was a lot of practicing instrumentally first, and it's starting to get committed to muscle memory. So now you can start working in like, how will this phrasing work with what's going on with my arms and legs and whatnot. And then once you get to the point where you can kind of put those two pieces together, the third part that I didn't really think about until I started doing it more and more was learning the breathing aspect, which is hard, because it's things like, hey,
that was my follow-up. I was like, when did you learn how to breathe?
Yeah. But it would
because you don't think about that as a thing, right? And then then you'll find yourself like, oh my god, I'm gonna literally die if I don't get this piece of it together.
Yeah, and just like small things like, hey, I'm gonna do this fill, there's a vocal part, it's gonna be awkward if I try and take a breath in the middle of the fill, so let me grab it before or maybe at the very end. And I wouldn't really chart it out or anything, but in my head, there's certain parts where I'd be like, okay, grab a breath, get ready, go into the next piece. And until you get that squared away, I find, at least for me, I find that I'll be running out of breath. I'll start singing flat, things like that, until you get the breathing sequence right.
There's challenges that you would never think of if you aren't trying to do it. And again, where you would naturally think to draw breath or pause as a drummer wouldn't necessarily be the same place you would as a singer. And it seems like it seems like it's a lot. It would be a lot to handle, and it seems like it might be a bigger pull than than just playing guitar or bass and singing. So that said, I mean, I think you do it very well, and I think you do it in a way that is not a dude's yelling type of way.
Yeah, that's always something I've kind of. The very first Bear Claw record, it was more yelling or very aggressive singing, let's say. Than the subsequent two records, but especially after that with the other projects. I've always been in a band where I've usually got another person that can do the kind of spoken word yelling kind of vocal style, just as good, if not better than when I used to do it. But the big melodic stuff and all of that, that's a little harder to find sometimes. So I'm really trying to like work that in more, and which is great. It was more challenging than just barking off some stuff while playing drums.
Yeah, it's easy just to bark out some nonsense, certainly.
Yeah.
But I would. That's honestly, it's one. I mean, that's one of the first things that really kind of drew me to the Bear Claw stuff. That it wasn't just a bunch of hollering, which especially when you're talking to a band that, for people that aren't familiar, it's drums, 2 basses, and it's loud and heavy, but like there are hooks to it. There's melodicism to it, and something where having got to see that evolution, because I mean I got to see you guys play like pretty early on, was really quite fantastic, because I think that's a band that it's not that you guys didn't get out necessarily, but I think if you've been able to get out more, even like I think it probably would have brought you even more notoriety, because it's just you don't hear bands doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I think our timing was it's too bad we couldn't have been like 8 years earlier, like mid 90s.
Well,
mid 2000s, but
you guys have the replicator problem. Yeah, it's either a little bit too early or a little bit too late, right?
Right.
Okay, well, here we are. But that's also a band. As much I love Bear Claw, I think it's a great band. I know almost nothing about Bear Claw, like as far as like the origin and
sure.
So how did Bear Claw come together in the first place?
Oh man, okay, I put on the Wayback. We're getting the Wayback Machine here, as my dad says.
Exactly. Yeah.
But basically, Rich. Let me start with Rob, the non-singing bass player. Rob and I started playing when we were like 12. Like we literally learned instruments together, and so we had been in a whole bunch of projects that were, not really anything serious, but the most serious of those bands is that band I mentioned earlier, Hello Operator, and that was like right around 2000. And one of the guitar players, my friend Pete Amaro, he ended up going overseas to Italy to study art for about a year, if I remember right. And when that happened, Rich and Rob were also in that band with me, our 2 members of Bear Claw. And we said, well, let's do something while Pete's gone. And Rich had been playing guitar in that band, Hello Operator, and he's always said he's a bass player first. So he kind of came up with this idea of like, let's do something a little more noisy, a little more mathy. And he had this concept of using 2 bass guitars. And I know from a very early on point, Rich came up with the concept of he plays a 5-string Music Man, which has a lot of connotations about it, by the way. But Rich always stuck with it. I think he got that bass like in 92 or 93, something like that. But it was a 5-string, and what he did for Bear Claw, and what he's done, I should say, is he strings it high. So the lowest string is an E, and then he adds the highest string from a 6-string pack on it. And that was the idea of getting more of those higher frequency chords that worked better than this kind of just double low end chug that you've heard when I've heard other bass bands do it. So yeah, that started up, and we liked it, and it felt more exciting and more just natural than Hello Operator. So we just kind of ended up running with it, and that's how it all came together for the most part.
Yeah, and I think that so first of all, the idea of it not being immediately like super, lowest possible doomy, and kind of utilizing the higher register, which a lot of bass players don't do anyway. That kind of set it apart as well. And I think that's something that was like immediately like, oh, interesting, this is cool. And I think it worked for me pretty much from the outset. And it also served a function that I've noticed and talked about a lot, which is the fact that it stood out.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Like in the way that like there's a lot of bands that I feel like now it's become a cottage industry, but there's a lot of like Shellac Jr., Jesus Lizard Jr. type bands, and it didn't sound like any of that. It sounded pretty unique because of that. Like and it gave you guys a hook that it was like, oh, what's this all about? This is interesting, and it immediately caught the attention. So did you find that writing songs with that band came fairly easy?
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why we ended Hello Operator and just put everything into Bear Claw, is that it was very easy to write. It felt way more organic. Just the power trio is always a really fun formula, not having to worry about writing a second guitar part and all that stuff. Yeah, no, it for me with the drums, it was kind of a extra. I was especially into it because being able to key off at two different basses was extra fun for me personally. But yeah, it just came together really, really organically, and yeah, it was. I know when that first record came out, more than once I heard people who didn't know the makeup of the band be like, "Yeah, I heard your record and I didn't know what was going on. It's like something's weird here," but they didn't know that it was two bass players.
Right.
And then they figured it out later, and they're like, "Oh, that is a bass, isn't it?" And that was kind of what we were going for.
That's awesome. I mean,
anyway.
yeah, it's not quote unquote conventional, right? It's not a conventional thing, which I think is fantastic. I mean, that's a major positive attribute in my mind. So yeah, and that's the talk about the first record. Yeah, talk about that first record. That like when that came together, everything's still relatively fresh and new, right? At that point when you're doing that.
Yeah, one thing I left out, that's about the origin story, which kind of relates to this first record.
Since we're already in the way back scene and all,
Yeah. So Rob and I left Chicago to go to college. We both went to Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, and Rich followed us down there, and so we wrote almost all of that record in probably 6 to 8 months, I'd say. Down in Carbondale. And so once we got out of Carbondale, we came back to Chicago. We were pretty much ready to record the minute we came back to Chicago. So that was our goal. When we got back, we had kind of kicked around some ideas and what to do. And, Rich and I both just started up working, or Rob and I just started up working post-college. And so we scrolled away everything we could, and we ended up going to Electrical Audio and recording with Steve Albini, and that was a big goal for us, and it turned out as good as I could have imagined it, and so that was how that all came together, and I still am really happy with the way that record sounds, even coming up on 20 years later now. So
yeah, it holds up. So that's it's you could do worse. Right?
Yeah,
you can do a lot worse than recording Electrical Audio with Steve.
yeah, that's true.
And then so so you got that going. You're playing out. It's something where you're finding that overall the reaction to it is is positive. When you go to that second record, right? Like what are you looking to do with that one that's different from the first one? Like where are you guys at a band now?
Sure.
Like 2007.
Yep, around there.
Yeah.
So in terms of the reception of the first record, it was pretty solid, but in a small pond of way, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Chicago especially, we were starting to get a little bit of attention, and we luckily hit it off with Steve pretty well. So we played a show with Shellac in 2005 up in Milwaukee, actually, and that obviously helped a little bit too. People started hearing about the band. But when we got ready to do the second record, I think that we wanted to try to do something a little more melodic in general, not just so mathy and heavy, even though the first record's not all like noise heavy mathy, but there was a lot more shouting on the first record. So when So Speed Deep Owls came out, we tried to write stuff that was even a little more outside of our comfort zone, and definitely a lot more melodic singing, and so you hear a lot more of that going on that record.
Yeah, that was the most notable thing for me, probably at the time. And then of course where I was at is there was just as there are now. Most bands who are doing heavy were more from the what we call the dudes yelling camp. So again, that very much stood out. Did you think that from the standpoint of songwriting, did you feel like that the palette still had a lot to be utilized? Because I think some people are under the impression, true or not, that you just can't do that much with two basses. And I'm like, really? I don't feel that way personally, but
yeah, we never really had that feeling. Nothing ever felt really like nothing really like stagnated where we felt that we were running out of ideas for it. I think that with that second record, we did maybe overcompensate a little bit with the amount of melodic attention that we paid to it. And when the third record came out, I felt like we struck a really good balance because it was still. And let me go back. So I think the second record was good. We really enjoy it, but it felt like it lost a little bit of energy in certain points. And
Sure.
I think when we came out with the Refuse This Gift,
Refuse
it was
This
really the
was
perfect blend of the two.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
approaches.
I think that's you guys hit your stride on that one for sure. Now, if I remember correctly, so you were abroad for a while.
Yes,
too.
yeah.
And that's when you have not necessarily like a super defined end date. People have lives, things happen. Bands can fade a little bit. Was it ever sort of in question of it being the future of Bear Claw being kind of up in the air?
That's a good question. I would say no. We knew it was going to be different than getting together every week and practicing, but at the time we had a lot of stuff queued up ready to go. So first thing was I was living out of Frankfurt, Germany, and it was a defined 18-month assignment. So we knew when I was coming back. That definitely helped.
That helps, yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that really helped was we coincidentally had our second European tour scheduled, and it started the second month I was there. And so way to go, German vacation mandates, because I was like, worked for 3 weeks and I said, now I'll see you in a month. And they're like, okay, have fun. And
nobody batted an eyelash at it.
Yeah, not even bat an eyelash. They're like, yeah, okay, that's cool. I mean, standard vacations 3 to 4 weeks, so have fun. I'm like, great. So so that really helped too. We started off right away, and we did that tour with our good friends in Self-Evident. So that was
great. Yeah, and I fantastic band. People should pay more attention to Self-Evident. They're great.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, that was. So we came off that tour. It was one of the funnest things I've ever done, honestly. And we came off that tour. We were super hyped and ready to go. So we were trying to trading back song ideas, trying to keep it going a little bit while I was over there. And then I'd come back. I came back at least 2-3 times during that time, and we always would play a show, kind of keep it going. So did it slow down? Did it change? Yeah, but it still felt like it was moving, and there were some big milestones like that tour in the beginning, and then at the very end of it, like the last month I was there, we played All Tomorrow's Parties, where Shellac curated. So that was a huge.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, that was probably the best show we played. So
yeah, it's okay. Turns out it's all right.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we, even though it slowed down, like the week to week cadence, the overall like progression of the band felt like it actually picked up in some ways during that time frame.
Yeah, it seemed like it was more like almost calculated strikes to a certain degree rather than just like a sustained campaign. Just I don't know why I'm using war nowadays, but sure, we'll go with it.
Yeah.
And it struck me that it was very smart and very adult too in how you guys dealt with it, and the fact that it probably helps that nobody had it as their like sole identity or anything along those. So that probably helps a lot. Like if you deal with the expectations being maybe a little more reasonable and realistic towards adult concerns, I think that always helps.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you bring that up, because Rob and I in particular really always had a mindset that this was going to be the most serious hobby it possibly could be. But we were also very much cautious of turning it into a job, because we felt that if we turned it into a job, we might lose the fun, kind of carefree attitude of the band with respect to being able to write what we want to write and play when we want to play and tour when we want to when we don't. And so that was always a big part of it, was to try to, very, very serious hobby, but not a job. And so that I think benefited us when we went into this period when I was living over in Germany. Yep.
Was Rich on the same page with that too?
Good question. Kind of. I would say he had a slightly different approach, but he understood where we were coming from.
Right.
And he had some other endeavors that he started up in parallel.
Yeah, he was like
yeah.
sitting around like staring at the clock. You know,
Right.
He
Right.
kept busy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But
Talented dude too. So why not?
yeah.
But yeah, so you guys are able to kind of crazily keep momentum while also having a certain amount of distance. And again, I think the idea of remote like demo swapping and, you know, sending tracks back and forth to each other, all that's really easy right now. Like, but again, we're talking about this is over a decade ago. So
yeah, it was a little more difficult back in 2011. 2011. And I didn't have a drum set.
Want to do it? You got to put some effort into it.
Right. Sure. Well, the biggest thing is I didn't have a drum set there, so I couldn't really practice. So that's why I made sure I came back to Chicago, whatever it was, for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever. I'd come back and we would kind of like do like a crash course, and for me too, just to get like, you know, knock the rust off and not playing for 4 months in a row or something like that. But
right. Yeah. And so are you like, do you compose parts in your head that like you're waiting to hit the drums for?
I wouldn't say, yeah, general ideas like how tempos will move, things like that. We didn't like put parts together. It was more Rich would send riffs to me and say, hey, here's some new ideas. And I kind of had an idea of like what I might play with it. And then we firmed it up when we got together. Now, to be clear, we didn't do a ton of writing like when I'd come back for these week and a half long trips, but we were still had stuff that we were starting to work on, so that when I got back at the end of the 18 months, then we could really hit the ground running pretty quickly.
Right.
And that's when Refuse the Skiff started being put together.
Yeah. So then going from like a nothing to everything sort of model for playing, does it all come together really quickly, or is it almost like there's too many ideas and we have to like scale things back because it's been so long to work on this stuff?
Yeah, I would say there was a bit of that actually, where we didn't want to just develop every single idea that came out. And it, you know, that definitely played part of the way that it evolved, in that, you know, Refuse This Gift came out, there were a handful of ideas that kind of got put to the side. And then we actually, one of these days, want to record a fourth record, but I don't know when that's going to happen. It's been, how many years? What year is it? 12 years now since the last one.
I know. It seems like 12 years in the last week, my dude. Yeah.
But we actually do have about 4 or 5 songs that are basically completed, with the exception of lyrics. And, you know, it's something we want to try and get done at some point. But there were some of those that were moved aside. Not necessarily forever, so we won't develop that. But
yeah,
they're kind of like, you know.
Well, there was the one song
ideas.
you put out like oh god, I guess it's a while ago, because it was before Fucko got elected, so that was like what 2015 or something. You put that song out, and there's that demo they threw up right when the COVID hit.
Yep.
You know, it's look, being incredibly prolific isn't like the correct way or the incorrect way. It's just a way. So the fact that you guys have the longevity going on, and you kind of are fairly methodical with it, doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like a big deal that it's been 12 years since your last
No, yeah, I mean, and it's we just got together recently and played a show, and I hadn't even seen Rich and Rob in 3.5 years, the longest I've ever not seen them because of COVID. And it was really, I don't want to use the word surprise. Yeah, it was surprising in a way, but it was also very rewarding 2 practices, and it felt like we didn't lose a step.
Just snap right back in, right? Like,
yeah.
Except
that we're all a little more winded when we get done playing those songs now. But
hey, man, that's everybody. Like, that first one back. Wow, this is so great. Oh my god, I'm gonna die.
Yeah. I had a slight unfair advantage because I was practicing all the drum parts here in Denver at like 5,000 feet. I go back to Chicago, and it's a surprising change in amount of oxygen. And so I was a little struggling here, and I got back. I'm like, oh, I can do this all day now. Like down at
it's like having a gym routine on the moon or something, and then you come back and you're like, hey, I have superpowers, low grade superpowers nonetheless. So let's I do really like the Refuse This Gift record. I think that's probably my favorite of you guys's so far. Can you tell me like how that turned out? See, it's like you're like what 3 years or so that you're like working on this, and there's a lot of dynamics in that, and I feel like it's something you weren't paying attention to like vocals stuff before, but I think that's like the best representation.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think, like I said earlier, I think we struck a balance with the intensity original formula of the band with also trying to move it in a direction that was more melodic, a little more dynamic for sure. There's some sections of songs that are, Rich would roll the volume off and it was clean, which didn't really happen on the first record. A lot more attention to just the melodic singing parts were mixed a little higher. And I think also that we did all 3 records with Steve. The first record, we just kind of like said, do your thing. And it turned out good, but we literally had we didn't feel comfortable is the wrong word, but we just were like, do your thing. Second record, we were more comfortable with them. We made some suggestions, but we had moved into Studio A from B. And it turned out good, but I feel like when we got to Refuse This Gift, like everybody, including Steve, knew exactly what to do for the sound of the band at that point. And that really translated into the way that record turned out, especially from a sonic quality perspective.
That's a big advantage to working with the same person multiple times over too. Like you both kind of learn how each other works to a certain degree, and you're able to kind of get different positive aspects out of that because you're just like learning how to work together as you go forward and progress as a band and as musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And as you maybe more articulate a vision, or the vision kind of shifts or something as the band goes on.
Yeah, I think that we got kind of technical with suggesting certain microphones and things like that. And Steve was always very open to trying anything. But I think the other big thing that helped was I think we had played at that point 9 shows with Shellac or something like that. So Steve had seen us live a lot. So he knew what the band sounded like live. And that's kind of his thing anyway. And so he knew exactly how to capture that at that point. Whereas the first record, we were just some random band that came in. He didn't know who we were. And so
some dudes grinding it out. I guess the drummer sings. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, not that that's like super rare or anything. I just think that that's, when I'm thinking of dismissive ways to have a first impression for that early Bear Claw stuff, right?
No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, the amount of times I've gotten the whole Phil Collins thing live at a show happens every single not every single time. I'd say every other time, especially
it's like one of the only singing drummers that people know. And it's like, sometimes people, I think there's an inherent sexism of not saying Karen Carpenter is abhorrent, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
To me, it's like the ultimate singing drummer. But Phil Collins, sure. Yeah, Phil Collins, fine.
Yeah.
How do you land on that title on Refuse This Gift? Like, why was that the title? How did that come to pass?
Oh man, that's a really good. I think that came together because, from what I remember, Rich had an idea for the record title based upon some artwork that he liked, and it's come back to me now. So basically, he had this idea. He wanted to use this painting, and unfortunately, Rob and I were not that much into it. So then, when we picked up we came to a compromise, and it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing where we refused this gift. Like, we're refusing the gift of this. He was given the art as a gift, if I remember right, as well. And so it was kind of like a joke kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But that's pretty much that way it came together, if I remember right. Yeah. So tongue-in-cheek title.
Well, and it's funny because I sometimes I just kind of glom onto things. That one especially, I was like, that's a great album title. Like, I don't know like where that came, because your mind almost wants it to see return when there's gift, at least if you like Gang of Four.
I see. Nice.
But it's sort of like, oh, cool. Like it's an interesting, like it's a nice is it onomatopoeia? Kind of. The way the words fit together is very nice, and it struck me. And then also, I think around that time, was that when you guys dropped the promo pic with you being chased by the base cabs?
That actually is really old. We did that around the time the first one came out.
Is that go back all the way? One of my favorite.
All the way back to like 2004, I think we did that. Yeah.
When was the? Oh God, do you remember when there was the the thing the brick wall promo photos, like everybody like having like what? God, that seems like 100,000 years ago at this point. But that was like a thing where it's like, hey, check out this promo photo. Oh, train tracks, no cool.
Yep.
Yep. And what I love about that is that there is actually a train, if I remember correctly. But,
there is, yeah.
But rather than being like dudes standing around like trying to look hard by the train tracks, it's like no, you're literally being chased by two like fridges, right? Like the big base.
Yeah, yeah. We I've always pushed hard to have a bit of a just being kind of goofy and funny with it a little bit. And Rich would usually fight me a little bit on that, but he would be bought in for that one.
And then there's like the drumstick photo. I don't know if you use it for official promo photo, but I remember where it's like it's almost like it's almost like a kung fu move or something. I don't know how to describe it. This is gonna be great for the podcast listeners. Like, what is he talking about? Conan Neutron gesticulates wildly. But it's and I guess where I'm going with that isn't to be like, hey, do you remember those things you did? Yeah, that was cool. So much as to say that I feel like the presentation of the band kind of leaned into making it enjoyable for the unorthodoxness.
Mm-hmm.
Like you kind of made that a selling point, might be overselling it, but you made that a part of the character of the band, and I always thought that was very interesting.
No, I agree, and thanks. Yeah, that's we try to do it a little different in terms of standard approach.
So you've played Bear Claw stuff recently. Is there any more stuff on the horizon for Bear Claw right now?
We don't have anything planned yet, but I actually have, when I was back about a month ago, mentioned to Rich and Rob again about, hey, let's try to maybe develop these 4 or 5 songs, and I think they're down to do that. Otherwise, we'll definitely keep a 1 or 2 time a year show approach. And we actually were booked on the No Coast Fest last year when a bunch of things started falling apart because of COVID. That was going to be our big re-entry into the wild, or whatever you want to call it. But so maybe eventually, we're not doing it this year, but maybe next year or something like that, we'd look to do that as well. Rob actually just had a kid, so he's a little busy at the moment. But I think he'd be he definitely wants to try to keep playing, and especially with how much fun we had recently getting together and playing the barbecue, it was felt like old times. So I think we'll try and fire it back up.
Why not?
Yeah.
How did Rented Rooms come together?
So that one just kind of came together because Rich started playing with Chris Metcalf of the Life and Times, and they were jamming for a really long time, like 2 years, and they had tried a couple bass players out, didn't really work, and Rich was kind of thinking of doing it as a 2-piece, and then I think it was prior to Bear Claw practice actually, and
we're just talking
he was complaining. Yeah, he was complaining about because everybody practiced in the same space, and he was complaining about not being able to find a bass player. And I'm like, well, I know what I'm doing a little bit with that. What do you think? He's like, sure, if you want to it's just like no pressure. And for me personally, it was really, really fun because I got to just riff off of Chris Metcalf, which he's an amazing drummer, and it was really fun putting those bass lines together with him because it really was 2 drummers kind of almost like double drumming, but with bass and drums. And so it was really, really fun to have that project going, and gave me a chance to really hone some of my bass playing skills. And so that was also an added benefit of getting into it. So
yeah, Becca Joint of Burned or Buried and Quattrotet is the one who told me about you guys, and it was actually to her credit, attribution. She was the one like, guys, they should have just called this band Drummer.
I think I remember saying that. Yeah.
Deeply hilarious, and it was like, oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because Rich has drummed a little bit too. So yeah, but
well, and the rhythmic sensibility to it was there's a lot of science being dropped in that band, and it hit differently than I think any of the other bands that any of you guys had been into. Or they had been in, maybe not into, and it made for is pretty exciting and different, and it was something that very much took me by surprise, and pleasantly, and like also like, with you, it's like, this guy can play bass too. Damn it! How dare you? First of all, how dare you?
Well, it's probably the easiest of the stringed instrument. I'm just kidding. But I feel like it's just one. Again, having originally learned guitar, it was a variation of drums, kind of going back to my guitar playing days, and I actually found it a lot more fun to try and get back into playing a melody-driven instrument, but having it be a bass rather than a guitar. I can still play guitar, but I'm a mediocre guitar player at best, and the bass, I felt like I was able to put a little more. Develop my skills a little bit, and it was really rewarding to kind of try to step outside my comfort zone with drums. So,
yeah, and it seems those songs are. It seems like parts of it, got kind of complicated, but not overtly complicated. So that's you're trying to build your skills on an instrument, right? It's going to push you to try different stuff and do different things. Did you find anything? And obviously Chris is a fantastic drummer. Did you find anything with his playing that was sort of like interesting, like sort of mental note?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Well, every time I see Chris play, it always amazes me that such a small guy can hit the drums so hard. It is just. I've never seen that ratio ever. I mean, I probably weigh twice or 2.5 times what Chris weighs, and he hits the drums harder than I do. And so that was the first takeaway watching him play. A lot of his hi-hat work is very interesting. So I pay attention to that a little bit. And I don't know, it was kind of an interesting thing because like sometimes him and I really would get going where I'd be like suggesting specific drum aspects to build in, but then he'd also, because he plays guitar as well, and he's like, oh, what about if you do this on the bass? So we were like suggesting parts for the other instruments that we weren't playing, and that was an interesting dynamic too. So it was, but just mainly just his ability to throw in like the real fast kind of fill or accent that and in spots I typically wouldn't think to. So it was just fun to watch him play, to be honest. I was just kind of happy to be there doing my bass thing, watching him do his thing. So
well, it definitely seemed like there was some writing cross-pollination for sure, but it came across as a very very tight entity early on, I think, just because of if nothing else, you and Rich, different instrument, but you have that almost telepathy that happens when you play with someone for a very long time. And then, as you mentioned, Rich and Chris had played together for a long time too, so you almost get like a cheat code as a band when you have that affinity with someone. I know the 7-inch, the Pacemaker Birds of Prey is that the only recorded output from Rented Rooms?
It is, which I've been hoping we can change that at some point, or at least Chris and Rich will move on. We did record some other songs in that session. They weren't finished, but there's enough to do a whole record. There's at least 35 minutes of music, so it'd be nice to try to finish it. But that's kind of Rich's project, Rich's baby. So I don't know exactly what he's got in mind for it. But I told him if they get to a point where they're ready to record, at this point I'll have to relearn the bass parts, but I'd be happy to join them up and then finish recording those songs. So
yeah, I mean, look, I'll buy it. I love that band. It's great.
Give Rich an email and put some friendly pressure on him.
What's good with Rented Rooms?
Yeah.
Sign Conan Neutron. Yeah. I've sent weirder emails. so around the time that came out, if I remember correctly, that's when you put together the Altamir's impeachment shows.
Yep.
Which were fantastic, by the way. That was a real cool. I went to the first of the two, and that was one of my first events upon moving to the Midwest was Altamir's impeachments, and then the AMREP bash, and it was the same weekend. And I managed to pull off going to both of them, which was pretty impressive. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Going to Neutron and pat yourself on the back for that. That's a great example of a communitarian effort, but also a unique vision as well. And having played all tomorrow's parties, obviously it's a play off of, at least if not the festival, then the song name, right?
Sure.
Politically, there was a lot going on at the time. Do you want to expand upon like how you originally had the idea and how it came to pass?
Yeah, honestly, it was pretty straightforward. Trump won, and I was really pissed. So I decided that I was going to try and put something together, and came up with that name just because I thought it was a good play on all tomorrow's parties. And so then I started writing to some bands, and it started to kind of pick up steam because all these other bands were also feeling the same way. Wanted to do something, wanted to raise money, and to help protect some of the things that we felt were going to be under threat. And so I think I started with Shellac, and Bob and Steve were immediately like, we're in, just let us know the date. And then after that, it kind of became this thing of trying to get some bands that hadn't played in a while. And so they were still active, but at that point, Poster Shodan had been not playing a real lot. And so we got Poster Shodan to join. And then the big one was getting Tar to kind of come out of retirement.
Yeah.
And they played. And there was also a few others. Dianoga wasn't playing a lot at that point either. They joined us, which is always a treat to have the two
great bands.
Two bass bands from Chicago.
I was gonna say two bass solidarity, yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta stick together, man.
Yeah. And then there was just so much interest in it that we ended up doing 2 nights, and it ended up being great. The only setback, I felt bad for him, but Steve got doored in Chicago riding his bike, so he broke his arm, and Shellac couldn't play, but Poison Arrows stepped in, and they covered, and that was great to have them. And we ended up making about $20,000 and gave it to the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ACLU, and just kind of split it up half and half, and that was great. It was, it felt like we really did something that moved the needle at least a little bit. So
yeah, and especially at the time, I think people needed to feel like they were building towards something and not just grinding on the news of the day necessarily.
Right.
I thought and of course, so for me, from my perspective, I was there for the whole bill, right? I was like, I love Nonagon, I love Lardo and Bearclaw just as much. I love Dianoga and Shellac and Tar and Poster Children, but I love that the idea, the random order thing was a bold move.
Yep. I'm trying to remember who came up with that. I want to say, I think that was Bob and Steve. I'm pretty sure, which was funny because then he got doored and then they couldn't.
And they couldn't do it exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, they were pushing for that, and I said, okay, well, let's try it. I get it. And it worked out. People stuck around. And there were a few. I remember at Bottom Lounge allowed people to return or cancel their tickets when Shellac had to drop, but we had very, very few of those, and so it still ended up being real successful.
It's always like, what's a benefit? It's like, yeah, for real, dude, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I also like the subversion of the paradigm where, I'm here to see the quote unquote headliner, and the headliner plays last, and this and that. I'm thinking of the fact that I think for Jello's birthday party, in San Francisco. I don't remember what year it was, his 1000th year birthday party. Who knows? Like Melvin's played first, right? And like Akimbo played like after them, which deeply hilarious. And of course, it confused some people because they just assumed that, okay, well, we're going to see the famous band last, right? And this and that. And
Mhm.
like, well, why don't you just show up for the whole thing, and then you won't have to worry about these problems.
Yeah, agreed.
And it also is something where it's it's unexpected. It's an unexpected thing to do, which is good. I'm always, I think that was, and especially for something where that was like a communitarian effort, right? It wasn't like, hey, if we sell this amount of tickets, the president goes away. No, that isn't what it was. But like, again, it was building towards a literal charitable cause, like raising money for a good cause. And the idea there shouldn't be that, oh, I want to see band X.
Yep.
It should be that like you're there for the thing. And I thought that was handled very well.
Yeah, thanks. I remember when that was suggested, I kind of did oh, that's interesting. And then when I thought about it more, I said, it actually makes a lot of sense for this. You're coming for the whole event. You're not just coming to see one band. Let's randomize it, and nobody knows what time they're going to start. So it's fun.
You can activate everyone's imposter complex, and away you go.
Yep.
Yeah, but I thought that was there's a lot of things that get thrown, some of which have a charitable aspect to them, some of them don't. But I thought that was very well organized and put together, and it seemed to happen pretty quickly from the outside. So
it came together real organically. I mean, I think Bottom Lounge was one of the first venues I contacted, and they were into it 100%. So
nice.
And that was everything. They donated everything. Like the only thing I think we had to cover was sound guy costs, but there was no other costs that they took.
That's awesome.
They typically take a cut, and right now it's our donation as well. So that was really cool of them to do.
It's nice to see, and yeah, for a lot of folks, that era of time, especially 2017, like there was no balance of power whatsoever too. It just pretty dire for a lot of us. So it was nice to have something to positive to focus on for that. So kudos for that.
Thank you. Thanks.
So let's talk about your new record, man. Let's talk about Almanac Man. So this is a Ghost is Clear. Did it right. This is Bobby, the legendary Bobby, is who actually has a lot of good bands on his roster, and seems like he's doing very good work out there. And
for sure,
he's quite the character, and I mean that as a compliment. So you put this together. When did you record this?
We recorded it in July of 2021, and it didn't come out until much later. It followed a totally different process than I've ever done before. Pretty much everything I've done has been in a somewhat live setting where everything's tracked for the most part at once. Some overdubs here and there, especially doing the analog route at Electrical Audio with Bear Claw. But what we did with this one was we went in the studio and we didn't even have half the lyrics written yet. It was just
really wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was still just music except for half of them. And so that was one big change. But the other big change was it was a very small studio in Denver called Green Door Recording Studios. And Felipe, who owns and runs the studio, used to work up in Blasting Room out of Fort Collins. So we went in. It was basically a converted 2-car separated garage. Really well done, the conversion and the setup. But I'll be completely honest, I had fairly low expectations, to be honest. And so we went in, and everything was done with direct input other than the drums at first. And we recorded all the drums completely separate, and then went back and added the bass, and then went back and added the guitar over, I think it was 2.5 days or something like that. And it turned out extremely well. I never expected it to sound so cohesive and
Yeah, it doesn't sound
live.
and
And then the vocals were really strange because we tracked all of them in my house in the practice room. And
really?
so,
Wow.
yep.
Okay. Does not sound like it.
Yeah. I think everything was recorded with the exact same mic you're using right there, if I remember right. But the RE20. So we sent all that over to
Very versatile.
Felipe. Yeah, exactly. So we sent all that over to Felipe, and I never even showed up again. I just sent him the raw wave files and said, here they are. And I gave him a reference with an MP3, and he did his thing. And I just had never done a record like that. And the ability to write the lyrics after everything was recorded and really spend time trying different ideas, and doing it in very small chunks, like one song a night. Voice got a little tired from that one song, could stop. I'll come back 2 days later, do the next song. And it took about 4 months of just finishing all the vocals in a very, very slow way, and then sent it off to him, and that's how it came together. So it was a really, really, really different process for me, and I was really surprised how well it turned out, to be honest.
Did you find any difficulty with sort of keeping yourself honest as far as what was and wasn't the best performance, doing it that way?
Well, I mean, the drums were still done in a way where I had to pretty much nail the part, obviously.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, you can't.
It's hard to punch drums. Not impossible, but
yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah. The guitar, I mean, we purposely put ourselves on a clock, so to speak, with the guitar and bass because we didn't want to turn it into overdub nightmare scenario. So it was like, okay, we're gonna get this done in 2 days. Yeah, exactly. So that was done, even though it was done separate, it was more or less because the studio was one really nice live room that would have been too much to get all the different, guitar, bass, and drums all live in that one room. So that was pretty organic, even though it was separate. The vocals, we just committed to not going totally crazy with overdubs and tracks and stuff like that. But it was, for me, a different experience because typically, we were on a 16-track, 2-inch reel-to-reel with Bear Claw. It's like we had 2 vocal tracks left. That's it, So unless you want to start bouncing and stuff. And so, but I mean, I did do some stuff on the Almanac Man record, and Brian did too, or we did do several takes. There's sometimes, 3 parts together of myself and maybe 2 with Brian, things like that. So we definitely experimented a little more. But I think the result was it came out. It still sounds pretty organic. It doesn't sound super processed or anything like that. But
definitely,
it was a very different way of doing it.
When you mentioned that you recorded that way, that actually is very surprising me because it doesn't have that feel at all. And there's some records that do.
Yeah.
And that's best left there. And nobody needs to pick that up. That's fine. Some records do. And you have the. Well, and I want to go through everything. Like I said, I want to do a song by song on For Your Cause, but I do want to mention the comp, this Cold Bone song that's that came out earlier. That's what was the origin of that?
That was the first song that we pretty much wrote, and it was actually at one point going to be. I have to defer to Brian a little bit on this, but if I remember right, at one point it was going to be a Larium song that never actually turned into anything, and it was only halfway completed.
Yeah.
But we honestly were just so ready to put something out at that point.
I'm sure.
We said it was 2 years into the band.
Yeah.
And that was the one that we had down the best. And we just said, let's do that, and we'll put that on the comp. And we recorded it all in the same spot we practiced and did it all ourselves. But it was just kind of a first, let's get something out there so people can hear what Almanac Man is, because there was literally nothing before that. So
yeah, well, there's a lot of bands out there, and then when you're starting up a new thing, and half of it is just letting people know that you exist, practically, right? Or maybe not half, but maybe more than that at this point. But it occurred to me that was a very again, I heard about it without knowing who any of the players were at all, and then I was like, oh, it's Scott and Brian's new thing. They're in a band together. Oh, neat. Like it. But I had already listened to it at that point. It's like, this band's good. Right on.
Cool. Very cool.
Which is good. I mean, for me, it being not a friend rock situation is absolutely a positive attribute.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's. So you're down for doing going through song by song on for your
Sure.
So the idea with this is we just go through each of the songs. You can tell me anything that comes to mind, whether it's arrangement, writing, lyrics, vocals, recording process, story behind like the title, whatever strikes your fancy, and then we can go on. So it starts off with God Riff.
Yep. So I took the liberty of checking some of this with Brian because some of these songs are more his lyrics and some are more mine.
Right, exactly. You don't want to misrepresent it, sure.
But I can tell you that the reason it's named that is that was one of those, you come up with a pet name for a song before you actually name it. Mm-hmm. And we actually just went with the pet name for sure. So that was named God Riff as a pet name. And it was just that opening riff is something that I know Brian feels it's probably the best. I think his words, not mine. He says it's one of the best riffs he's ever written, maybe the best. And so, I know the lyrics are mostly about, he said it's, about never being able to convince someone of the way that you view something is, like being able to, explain your perspective and they get it. But in terms of the way it was put together, Brian and I had kind of worked that one out, mostly guitar, drums, and that was right around the time, if memory serves, that Nick came into the band. And so that was kind of a steep one for him to learn and write all his bass parts on, because it kind of jumps around a lot. There's a lot of,
I was gonna say that's a deep into the pool business. You just throw them right in, right?
Well, luckily, he had the previous experience of playing with Brian and Lyrium, but the way we've always kind of done it is, again, the way I always write lyrics when playing drums, I always have the drum part completely almost committed to memory, muscle memory. Then I sit down and try to write lyrics, and then I try to put them together, which sometimes goes very smooth, and other times goes not very smooth. But that one took a little longer to get the drumming and singing down live. That just was kind of a banger that we were able to get done relatively quickly, except for the vocals. So
yeah, it's a pretty audacious opener. Like it's a bold open. It's a statement of intent.
Yeah, and I think that was just like understood. Like everybody's like, yeah, it's got to be the first song. It just has that vibe to it. So
yeah, there's a few ways to go with that. I think that's definitely a tried and true method of, okay, let's bang hard and show them what we got here.
Right.
Kings and Queens.
So that one was actually kind of originated with Nick, and that's why it's got a lot more like a bass feel when it first opens up. That actually was, other than I forgot the name of it now. The one on the very first song we were talking about on the EP. Anyway, this was the first song I learned where they hadn't ever like actually put something together before. So I was writing the drum part from scratch. I hadn't heard any earlier demos, anything like that. So that one kind of took a little longer just because I was feeling out still how the band was going to come together. But it's a good mix, I think, of moods. It has, kind of a back and forth bass and drum kind of trading off. And then there's a big melodic section in the middle. And that was like the first time that me and Brian kind of sat down and talked about how we were going to structure lyrics with kind of having a two-headed monster of sorts. Because that's always a kind of touchy thing in my experience. When you have two singers that are both singing lead, who's going to take what riff? Who's going to take another riff?
Are you going to go for the same spot and try to do something? And
right. So we kind of used that song to work through that, and it actually was pretty smooth, which I think boded well for the later stuff in the band, where that's been pretty organic the way we've been able to like write two vocal parts and not really step on each other's toes too much.
Yeah, it seems very symbiotic that way. thoughtful, right? Which one would hope people would think about it, but then some bands you gotta wonder. See Through Twilight.
That one was kind of I don't know if it was intentional, but it's probably one of the more melodic songs on the record.
Mhm.
And Brian definitely did the heavy lifting in terms of the direction of the lyrics. It's basically about dementia, and I know that there were some people in his family that were suffering from it. My grandmother was suffering from it, so I had a lot of material for that concept, and he did as well. So that was a really easy vocal song, I think, for both of us. We had plenty of material, and luckily we didn't really, there's certain parts of the song where big melodic singing or a more melodic part is just kind of, we were like, definitely something melodic there. I'll usually take that. And the more heavier, more, mathy parts that maybe need a little more of a spoken word yelly kind of thing, Brian kind of takes. So that song kind of came together really naturally in that respect, and by the way it's structured. But I remember when I was writing the drum part, the one thing was coming up with the tom rhythm in the beginning. Tried to play it really like a part that wasn't just rhythmic. It actually has like a tonal kind of quality to it.
It does have a like a it's like a hook almost. So which drums can be hooks. I shouldn't sound so surprised about that, but
yeah.
No, it fits together very nicely, and that's a tough topic, man. But it's fits together very nicely.
Thanks.
Okay, Incohabitant.
So that is all Brian, and I know that concept of that song is something that we're experiencing just about everywhere right now in the U.S., but especially in Denver. Gentrification, rising prices, pricing everybody out of their ability to live in neighborhoods they maybe have lived for a very long time. So he went with that and wrote all those lyrics around that topic. The writing of that's definitely the mathiest song, and it started coming together really. We could tell right away this is going to be a really jerky kind of mathy song, so we just kind of decided to kind of go for it, not even try to come up with something like a melodic balance or a straightforward part to kind of calm down. We're like, let's just go crazy on the song. So
bear down and do it.
yeah. So there's some parts in there. I some parts remind me personally of like some Don Cab stuff and some other stuff like that. But it is kind of a unique one on the record in my mind. It sticks out a little bit, but I actually think it works in the context of the larger record. And that's a big thing, I think, is we don't want, obviously every band has a formula, but I think we're pretty much on the same page, and there's a little bit of an attention to, hey, let's not make every song be 100% in line with the formula. Let's push the boundaries a little bit so it actually varies from song to song. So
and very, very much so. And this one definitely, this one feels very nice in the middle, right? Like like I think if you started off with this one, people would expect it to be a completely different band almost.
Yeah, that's
and that's people's perceptions, but that's also the world we live in. It's one of and it's interesting to see how that's changed with people making records, where what made a great first song in the 90s isn't necessarily always going to be the case now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That one definitely brings the prog, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In a good way. Small Faith.
So Small Faith was the one that I think we took the most. I think Brian said, let's just go for it, especially vocally. There's a lot of, so let me back up. That song was done instrumentally. We recorded it instrumentally in the studio. We literally had 0 vocal parts when we recorded it. We didn't have any phrasing, nothing, just a song, the music. And I mean, there was an attention to make it heavier and slower and melodic. So we knew that a lot of the vocal parts would be more, in my area of what I typically do in Almanac Man. with big melodic parts. And so there's a lot of that going on in the song, but it was one of those that we tried a ton of ideas in the basement here before we committed to any kind of actual concept. And I've never done a 4-track part before, but I decided to just go for it. It's like the whole opening and ending for the sequences with the vocals. There's actually 4 tracks of me on that. Some are yelling, some are singing, and everyone's a harmony. So obviously live, I have to dumb it down a little bit, but we kind of just went.
Gonna say either that or hire some backup singers.
Yeah. But I'll say this: I tried to make it so that if you dropped everything away and went back with the main riff, it wasn't going to sound totally empty. It was more accenting the primary melody rather than like 4 very distinct parts that you would never be able to replicate live. So, but the big challenge with that one was we recorded it, did all the parts here, and then Brian and I looked at each other. We're like, how the hell are we going to sing and play this now? Because we had never tried. We had literally never tried to do it.
Right.
And it was on the record. So we're like, okay, we have to, it's almost like learning a cover or something.
How to land the plane on that one.
Yeah. So, and it did, I'll be honest, it did not go that smooth. That one took a while to put together, but we got it put together now. And it's actually one of my personal favorites to play because it just has a lot of tempo changes, and the singing is challenging, especially live, but in a good way.
Well, but it's, you don't want to have it be only the low hanging fruit too, right? Challenge yourself a little bit and see what you can and can't do. And there, not there's any shame to if you like write a song, you're like, okay, that's just going to be a song that's on the record because this doesn't work. Because sometimes you can do it, put all the work into it, and it's like, why didn't anyone react to that the way we thought they would? and then there's the other thing where you're like, this one's fine, and like people like just like lose their minds, and you're like, that's one, really? Okay.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying.
Which that's just the fun of finding out what it's like live, like the pleasure of finding things out, right? Anyway, whatever. Good tune though. So then that takes us to Gloom Moon.
Yep. That one it was written pretty close to when we knew we were going into the studio. And we knew we wanted to finish it, but I remember finishing that one up only like a week or 2 before we actually went into the studio. So it was still a really new song for us. I think the big difference on that one is that it just opens up slow and sparse, and there's not a lot of that on the record. And it's kind of a very like sectioned song, but intentionally. So you have like your whole opening section, then it moves into this kind of more upbeat kind of driving riff. And when I put the lyrics together for that one, I tried doing some really like different harmonies on the latter part of the song, and it's kind of something that I think works, but it's almost kind of like a sour harmony at points. And it's I remember that was another one I had the liberty of trying a bunch of stuff because we hadn't had any lyrics put together when we actually recorded the music for it. So I ran it by Brian. I'm like, I think this works. What do you think? And he was into it, so we ended up going with it. But that kind of sour off harmony or atypical harmony was definitely a unique aspect of that one for me.
Are you coming at that from like a music theory place, or is it just more like, hey, how does this sound kind of vibe? I tried like a more traditional harmony, and it just sounded too happy and for lack of a better word. Yeah. No, I get it.
But then I tried something really just weird, and at first I'm like, it's not going to work. And then I listened back to it, and I'm like, wait a minute. And so I did a couple more takes, and it just, I had never personally put 2 lines together like that, where they almost kind of like, there's a little bit of dissonance to it, I guess the way I would put it.
Yeah. It's not happy sounding.
Right. And that's what I was going for, was trying to find something that would fit the mood of that part of the song.
Sure.
But, when you think of harmonies, they're not normally dissonant. They're usually very complementary. So that was kind of a, new ground for me. But that's one of my favorite ones to play live too. It just, it starts off kind of, and it just drops in, and it's a real driving riff, and usually the crowd reacts pretty positively to that. So it's a good one.
It's a good one. Seems like a good place for it as the closer too. Was that ever
Yeah.
a question or anything?
No, but I think Brian put that together, and Nick and I looked at it. We're like, yeah, it totally makes sense to have the record in that. I mean, especially the. Oh,
oh, you all right? Everything okay?
there we go. Looks like I hung up for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Um,
I was gonna say, watch out, the FBI, man. It seemed good closer. Good way to close the record out.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I was never really down on the opener and the closer with the order on that one. So
what did you what's up with the album art? What did that come early on in the process? Did you already have it sorted out beforehand, or
Brian basically had that sorted out. He had an artist that he had in mind, and we gave him a little bit of direction, but not too much. And we saw the early, the early draft of it, and we all said, "Oh, that's really cool." And so told him to run with it, and it worked out awesome. It was, I like it personally, and it kind of stands out a little bit.
Yeah, and it makes for a
scheme.
cool. The T-shirt's a kind of a cool derivation too. Like it's cool looking. It's It's like, oh, what's that? What is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is what you want instead of like, oh, that. You don't want that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. We don't want to have a situation where we're making another title where we're rejecting ideas and naming the whole record after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Although it worked out okay for that one.
It did work out okay for that one.
So yeah, and for folks that are new to the band, almanacman.bandcamp.com, the ghost is clearrecords.com. You can get the vinyl and CD there through the world of Bobby, and he's got a lot of great. There's a whole bunch. I mean, that guy's doing the Lord's work for weird music out there.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Says the atheist.
Yeah, Brian's also pretty heavily involved in that label, so I know Bobby's the mastermind. So
you know what? You know what? Good point. I'm like giving Bobby all the credit. Like props to Brian as well. It is a partnership, and yes. Credit where credit is due. Great label. Synergy, symbiosis, all the S words. Only the good ones though. So how do you like Denver? Yeah, you think that's a good place to operate out of for doing this kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's Denver's a unique city, and especially musically, because it's a bit of an island in that if you're going cross country, unless you're going to do a 16-hour nonstop drive and you're going across, you're going to stop in Denver because it's 8 hours in every direction to any other kind of city to play, basically. So what I mean by that is we get a lot of touring bands coming through, and having lived in Chicago for almost 20 years, I get to see all these shows happen that are at relatively small venues that are, they're well attended for the venue, but they're not playing a 4,000 capacity club in Denver. They're playing I saw like Failure Swerve Driver playing together, and I expected there to be, there's plenty of room, like maybe like 60% full. So it's kind of an interesting vibe to go from always jam packed for these bigger shows. And the scene here is good. There's a ton of music venues. That's the thing that surprised me there's actually more places to play in Denver than there were in Chicago, at least at the kind of level of band that Almanac Man and Bear Claw and other bands I've been in are in. So there's lots of options. So it's a good city in terms of that. And then just living out here, I think my wife and I timed it. We didn't do it intentionally, but when COVID hit, there's a ton of stuff to do outside here. So we had
outdoor activity central. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So a bunch of people back in Chicago were asking me, like, did you know that was coming? How did you?
Did
you time that?
So we weren't privy to. Yeah, it's like
Interesting side note on COVID was I didn't mention this, but with Almanac Man, we actually lost like 5 months right in the beginning because the whole band got it together before anybody even knew what it was. We got it like March 2nd of 2020.
Man.
And like they were just starting to be like, hey, everybody should start wearing masks, and we're like, oh wow, this is something serious. And then
would have been good information to have early.
Yeah, and then like the next day, Nick called me and Brian. He's like, hey, I feel kind of stupid telling you this, but my girlfriend's got a cough. And we're like, whatever. And then like 2 days later, he's like, yeah, she's got COVID, and you couldn't even get a test back then. Like,
no, they didn't even have them.
Yeah,
yeah.
She was able to get one because she has real bad asthma.
Right.
So they like prioritized her, and it took like 18 days to get the results or something crazy. And we had all recovered by that point, but after that, we had to kind of stay away. And you know, everybody knows how COVID went at the beginning, but it was a weird situation to have to put a pin in the band for like 4 months.
Again, right at the inception, practically.
Yeah,
you know, right at the beginning of the story, like when it's supposed to be when you get that kind of nervy thrill of having something new, and then it's like, oh yeah, you got something new, all right.
Yeah,
here it goes. Happy pop. And again, I just always bring this up that there's this like retroactive piousness that a lot of people have of like, well, everyone knew around then. But I assure you, people did not know around then. And
I mean,
it's a weird alternate history that's been built by some people that is apparently exclusively to put judgment on folks online, and I don't care for it. But anyway,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So what's up for Almanac Man for this year?
Yeah. So we're playing a couple local shows. We actually got one Friday this week. We're playing with Moon Pussy out of Denver as well. We're joking around. I think they're awesome. I think we've played like 75% of our shows with them though. That's kind of the running joke. So if they're not going to show up on one of these,
bands, so
I
just don't see them. Yeah,
we're just saying we're not going to show. We're going to feel if they're not there. Something's going to feel off. But
something seems weird about this show. What is it? Oh, we're playing with a different band. Okay.
And Doug's on tour out of Minneapolis. So they'll be down for that one as well. And then after that, I think there's one in September. We're probably we'll do with you, of course. With,
I wasn't priming the bump for that, by the way. I can't say I forgot about it, but it wasn't top of mind. Which means I'll finally get to see you play, which is good.
Yeah, that'll be great. That's a cool venue too. It's a nice little bar / venue deal. And then after that, the big thing is we got our first mini tour where we're gonna go down to No Coast. We're playing No Coast end of October. Cool. That'll be really fun and good for the band to finally get out and play something a little bigger. And we're gonna do 2 shows on the way down. We're gonna play Kansas City at Mini Bar, and we're also playing I don't remember the venue off the top of my head, but we're playing in Oklahoma City the next night as well on the way down.
Nice. Awesome.
So get a couple shows in on the way down to Texas.
Chat Pile Country.
Yeah. Actually, the guys in Train Dodge helped me set the one up in Oklahoma City, so that'll be
Train
cool.
Dodge is I should absolutely have those guys on the show. Like, I mean, that's the reason why I would, not that I have a basic understanding of geography, but that's the reason why I know about that area is because of Train Dodge.
For sure, yeah. And we played there only a handful of times. It's because of those guys, for sure.
Yeah, I mean they're an institution at this point, and I mean that as a compliment, right? So, yeah, that's awesome. Can confirm, by the way, that the mini bar down to No Coast is that's a good vibe. We did that in 2020 actually. That's for this.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay.
There's a lot of cool stuff in Kansas City. It's a underrated town.
100% agree with that one. Yeah.
And then anything else I'd want to catch up anything.
No, that's on the immediate horizon. We got 2 new songs that we're nearing completion. I think I haven't talked to the other guys yet. I personally would like to kind of keep the EP thing going. I think my mind is released often and frequent and early. It just I had such a good experience at Green Door. I personally would like to go back there. I got to clear it with Brian and Sean, but just writing, playing, and that's that's about it right now.
Very cool. Well, Scott, I know you're at least somewhat familiar with the show, so you may be familiar with what's going to come next, but it's the only canned question I ever ask people.
Okay.
And choose to interpret it however you like. But why do you do what you do?
Whew. I've always been a pretty, so I can't, all right. Artistically, I've always had a draw towards sound and music. I can't draw for anything, and never had any kind of like that kind of artistic side. And so at a very early age, I got into music because my dad, he still plays saxophone player in a Blues Brothers band, and so I remember watching him play. Man, I was probably like 4 or 5, so that's always been part of my family makeup anyway. And yeah, I don't know, just once I started playing with Rob and got that first taste of playing rock music, it just never looked back. And I even sometimes have had the experience like we were talking about when I was in Germany, where I couldn't play drums and couldn't really express myself for 4, 5, 6 months. And I really need it, man. If I don't have it for long periods of time, it brings my whole mood down, I would say, and just I don't feel right, you know. So why do I do it? It's just kind of ingrained into me, and you know, I always try to challenge myself to step outside of my comfort zone with playing music. That's one of the reasons. I know we didn't get to it, but when I first moved out here, I started doing some solo stuff, like putting a lot of stuff together with guitar and bass and keyboard and drums, and doing everything myself. And that was, you know, again, just at first because I needed to just have music and be expressing myself. This is before I met up with Brian and everything with Almanac Man. So to answer your question, I do it because I have to, because I really enjoy it. And if I don't do it, I feel like I become a crabby person at that point. So yeah.
Scott Picco, thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
And
I'll see you in about a month.
I was gonna say I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yep. Have a good one. Take care.
Oh, there he goes. This is Scott Picco, Almanac Man, Bear Claw, Rented Rooms, so many others. Talented dude. Go check out all of his various things. And yeah, as mentioned, Ghost is Clear Records. Brian and Bobby. Don't want to no Bobby erasure here. Sorry, Brian erasure. God damn it. I'm trying to do two things at once. Bear Claw also. Everything's on Bandcamp, bearclawbandcamp.com. And then there's that Rented Room 7-inch as well. There's other things as well. Just use your internet, man. Figure it out. You can figure it out. Let's listen to some Almanac Man. This is we're gonna start. We're gonna play Gloomed Moon here. This is Gloomed Moon, the ending track on For Your Cause. Rented Rooms. Pacemaker. That's something you can get on good old Bandcamp. This is a 7-inch, rentedrooms.bandcamp.com. Before that, we had Bear Claw. That is the mighty Bear Claw with Backbreaker. That is the kickoff song.
Can you hear me now?
On Return the Gift. God damn it. Refuse this gift. Well, this is why I do it live, man. That's funny. Great song, great record. Bearclaw.bandcamp.com. I don't think that's on the other streaming services. The other ones are, but I think that's the best one. And before all of that, of course, Almanac Man with Gloomed Moon. For Your Cause, Ghost is Clear Records, Brian and Bobby. Great stuff. I like that record a lot. And of course, that was Mr. Scott Picco, who's just the best. Awesome dude. Cool. So hope y'all enjoyed that.
As we come to the close of our broadcast day.
The name of this show, of course, is Conan in Charge Protonic Reversal. Thank you very much for listening to it.
This is my farewell transmission.
This show airs live Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific.
Signing off.
Here in Radio Nope. RadioNope.com. Say yes to Nope.
Mrs. America, all the ships at sea.
Streaming on YouTube, Twitch,
Anyone within the sound of my voice.
Facebook sometimes. All that stuff. If you like the show, archives, protonicreversal.com, always free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. But if you want
50,000 watts of power.
episodes sooner, and to help support the show, $1 a month, patreon.com/protonicreversal. That achieves that goal. Of course, if you do like the show, or even just a single episode, please feel free to share it along. Like, subscribe, post a review. All that helps people find the show. And it's just a darn nice thing to do.
Sound into electricity.
Chat piles up next week.
Out on
Stay safe out there.
28th, dark and lonely.
Take it easy.
I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 The end of radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves a transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me